Remember when we read that book? I cannot remember what book it was. What book was it? Anyway, Grace Jones walked up to the couple and was like, "Hey, couple." It was a man and a woman, and she was like, "I want to suck you, and then when I get finished sucking you, I'm gonna suck on your wife." 1978, what was known as disco included much formulaic, Manilow-ish, like Barry Manilow-ish music to which white suburban people were dancing at Arthur Murray Studios and strip mall discotheques. But disco music, like jazz and rock, was actually black music. You know, that's the scandal behind disco. The word is that the white powers that be were jealous of how successful blacks were in the disco genre. They were making a killing of it, despite people like Casey and the Sunshine Band. Put below your favorite white disco artist. I would say it would be Casey and the Sunshine Band for me. I'm your boogeyman. That's what I am. Oh man, and when I tell you some of them Latino joints was off the chain, it was one groovy. Oh my gosh, it was so groovy. It was in Boogie Nights, one of the greatest disco soundtracks of all time. But it was like this Latino beat, and it sounded like this Latino was getting it in with whoever or whatever. You know, sounded like she was getting it in with a trumpet or some congos or bongos or something. But I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on white disco artists right now. But I mean, they was getting it, but they weren't getting it. Like black and brown were making money off of it, a lot of money off of it. That's the whole reasoning behind disco sucks. Disco sucks because us non-blacks can't get to the money. It had begun as party music in black and Latino underground clubs in the late 1960s, and by the 1970s had migrated to mixed underground clubs in New York like the Loft. Mostly black gay clubs like the Paradise Garage, and mostly white gay clubs like the 10th Floor. It took elements of rhythm and blues, soul, gospel, and funk, and added orchestrations and sometimes big band horns. Early party music came out of Motown and Philadelphia. International groups like the OJs and the MFSB, whose Love Is the Meaning became the Soul Train theme song in 1974. Soul Train, Soul Train, dun, 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 dun. People all over the world. New multi-track recording technology had made it easier to add in distinct instrumentation, the music writer Barry Walter points out, and brought out new element of style, the hissing hi-hat, the guitar that was scratched and plucked, the bass drum on every beat, the Barry White strings that would go up, up, up. Popular songs tended to let you know when they were ending, but DJs had started to create long, continuous, seamless mixes with instrumental breaks and ups and downs, and the structure of party songs was transmuted into a repetitive cycle that reminded you only of the present. The messages weren't cognitively complex or even especially deep. They were as idealistic as hippiedom, and they moved from your body to your soul to your mind. Word. If you've been around long enough to know, I would tell you the greatest genres of music to me would have to be go-go, disco, and funk. The greatest. All of them move you. And you know me, I enjoy anything that can physically move me without putting their hands on me, or touching me, or pushing me, or kicking me. I need movement in order to feel the music, you know? One of the greatest powers the universe has to offer. In 1973, the same year that Billboard introduced the term disco hit, party music had started to cross over from clubs into the top 40 by way of Soul Makassa, a song by a Cameroonian saxophonist named Manu Dibango. So this is the funny part. When the guy died, I couldn't remember what the name of the song was that he created. I was like, who is this guy? And why is he so recognized for his contribution to disco? And then I heard it. I said, God damn, that was his song? Because I remember them playing that song on the show Was Happening and on Soul Train. So I was like, ooh. When the Love Unlimited Orchestra's Love Theme and the Hughes Corporation Rock the Boat, don't rock the boat, baby, made it big the following year, the music industry started to smell the money. And they was mad as hell that Black Americans was holding tight on it. Why the white folks can't make no money off of it? They could, but it was a Black and Latin genre. Many kinds of music were labeled disco over the next few years. Almost any music with 125 beats per minute, or with a 4/4 kick drum and heavy strings and shakers, or with at least 2 beeps and 2 toots. There was funk and soul disco by groups like Sister Sledge, Taste of Honey, and sometimes the Jackson 5, and individual artists like Gloria Gaynor, Barry White, and Evelyn Champagne King, in which you could hear strings, echoes of Motown and gospel. There was spacey, lengthy, machine-like European stuff, heavy on the strings and synthetic effects, and light on the melodies by producers like Giorgio Moroder, the force behind Love to Love You. Love to love you, baby. Yeah, baby. And Jean-Marc Sermon, who made hits like Love in C Minor Part 1. There was top 40 disco from groups like Casey and the Sunshine Band, the Bee Gees. My bad for not recognizing the Bee Gees as a white group that was getting to the money during the disco period. And individuals like Rod Stewart with shorter, safer, radio-ready songs that prom hands could easily play. By 1978, disco had created into a giant wave of pennies, and almost everyone was trying to ride it. Disco and its related enterprises brought in an estimated gross of $8 billion, which even now is a preposterous amount of money. About 2/5 of Billboard's top 100 singles and albums were disco. And them ninjas was mad. Okay, can you understand? What did they say? $8 billion of it? And $6 billion of the 8 belonged to Black American and Latin American people? They was angry. Disco moved gayness, camp, and androgyny even close to the American mainstream than the glitter rockers had done. For instance, Grace Jones, dark and tall and angular, got her start as a model in European magazines, and by the mid-70s was a flamboyant gay club mixture with a series of disco hits. Pause. Remember when we read that book? I cannot remember what book it was. What book was it? Anyway, Grace Jones walked up to the couple and was like, "Hey, couple." It was a man and a woman, and she was like, "I want to suck you." And then when I get finished sucking you, I'm going to suck on your wife. I can't remember what book it was. Timmy, if you here, please remind me of what book it was. And they had to go to the host and be like, oh, we can't stay here. Grace Jones trying to fuck us. We got to go. And on top of that, Rick James has said that him and Grace Jones were great friends, meaning they used to run trains on the women. Sylvester and Harvey Fuqua, having fired or lost most of the band that had played on the first album, had quickly gathered up a new one. A drummer named Randy Merritt, a keyboard player named Michael Fender, and an 18-year-old bass player named Bob Kingston had joined Tip Warwick and David Frazier. Tip Warwick, the veteran of the band, was loosely serving as its leader. He'd shown up at rehearsals with some song-like thing in his head and insists that the band play around with it, hoping it turn into an actual song. The band members called these his exercises, and they teased him pitilessly about them. One day, Tip arrived with a nondescript, mid-tempo rhythm and blues ballad he'd written the night before in his tiny studio apartment on 13th Street. It was simple, just a few chords without a melody. The song excited no one, not even Tip. About 10 minutes before rehearsal was supposed to end, Sylvester blew in with a small entourage. "What have we got?" he asked. He listened to the latest exercise and impatiently waved for the band to stop. "No, no, no," he said, shaking his head. "What are you doing? Like this?" He stomped his foot fast and hard and signaled to the band to pick up the beat. Sylvester instructed the drummer pound the kick drum on the quarter notes. Psst, psst, psst. The hi-hat cymbals on the offbeat eights. Hit the snare on 2 and 4. Tip had already been thinking along the same lines, that if they used a bouncing bass an octave below the piano, which was what seemed to be working on the radio at the time, they might have a hit. They had the single, but only morsels of step 2. The album they were working on in the summer of 1978 were decided before Sylvester and the band went into the Fantasy Studio. Tip, Sylvester, and the band pretty much made up the rest of the album in the studio. They'd start playing Feel It and see what happened. Harvey Fuqua, who ex-partner Nancy Pitts called a musical genius, certainly didn't know how. Nancy Pitts must ain't had no more money. I mean, you know how Harvey Fuqua do. He get to the bitches, okay? And he got to Nancy. He threw with her. Bye, Nancy, bye. Harvey Fuqua, whom his ex-partner Nancy Pitts calls a musical genius, certainly didn't know how. He had been mentored by Alan Freed, the rock and roll DJ and TV show host, who became one of the most important promoters of rhythm and blues, and who in 1962 pled guilty to 2 counts of commercial bribery. Fuqua had a hand in the hit makings of Stevie Wonder, Diana Ross, Marvin Gaye, David Ruffin, and Tammy Terrell. He worked at Motown and RCA and had founded his own record label. He had hits with the Moonglows, with whom he would later be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He was no slouch. But in the studio with Step 2, Fuqua did not always seem entirely engaged. That's because Fuqua would be there but not there. Fuqua, are you here, baby? Are you here? Stop that bullshit, Lou. Ain't nobody at the door. Fuqua, are you here? The people playing, you supposed to be instructing us on where to move and on where to move it to, how to move it and how to go around it and stuff like that. But he was just there. Fuqua, what is you doing? Is you here with us? Are you on that shit, Fuqua? We know you mess with the Etta James, Fuqua. Are you getting busy with the shiz? Sylvester, the 2 Tons of Fun, and the band recorded most of the slower B-side cuts in Los Angeles. They did a Burt Bacharach, Hal Davis song called I Took My Strength From You. That Sylvester's friend, the singer Frank Lavarde, had turned him on to. On the A side of the album, there were just 2 songs, in addition to Mighty Real. Sylvester and the crew tossed on the album a song Eric Robertson and pianist singer who joined the group for the album had written called Dance Disco Heat. Sylvester saw Disco Heat as just another funny little disco song. Some of the others involved were even less impressed with it. And indeed, with the whole album, if you listen closely to You Make Me Feel Mighty Real, you could hear it speeding up and slowing down, coming out of time and back in again. I listen to the record now and I think it's God awful, James Work says. I really thought that thing was a piece of shit when we did it, says David Frazier of the album. The cover of Step 2 shows 2 feet on a pink tile floor. 1 foot is Sylvester's in a tan Ralph Lauren shoe from Wilkes Bashford, and next to it is a woman's dark red-nailed bare foot kicking over a crystal glass, spilling into its champagne. Sylvester popped into stardom with suddenness and force, like an ember that has smoked for a while and then without warning ignited. Dance Disco Heat, the funny little disco song about cooking on your feet in the disco heat, went to #1 in the US and British dance charts and quickly crossed over to the pop top 20. Most people who heard it noticed parts of their bodies moving. You Make Me Feel Mighty Real, which at first Fantasy did not much promote in the United States, by the end of the summer became the #1 disco song in most of the country's major cities. It hit the top 10 in England, Italy, France, Belgium, Germany, Spain, Holland, Switzerland, Mexico, Brazil, Venezuela, and Hong Kong. Step 2 went gold. Rolling Stone called the Step 2 album as good as disco records get, and the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner called it the best disco being made just now. Sylvester and the 2 Tons and the band, which now included Patrick Crowley, appeared on Dinah Shore, American Bandstand, Don Kirshner's Rock Concert, and the Merv Griffin Show twice. Sylvester invited Dinah Shore's other guest, Charo, into his dressing room and lifted her up in front of the cameras. Their photo appeared in papers in St. Louis, Grand Rapids, and Dallas. They eventually joined the California Jam Tour, sponsored by an R&B radio station, with soul artists like Evelyn Champagne King, Peabo Bryson, and Atlantic Star. The tour was just a few days long, but Sylvester rose right to the top. Our first night in Concord, we were the opening act, Robert Kingston said. By the final show in Long Beach, we were going on last. Their whole show consisted of just 2 songs, Mighty Real and Disco Heat, which Sylvester stretched to nearly a half hour each. Possible, that's what dance music can do. When in the middle of Disco Heat, Izora emitted the guttural wail, get on your feet and dance to the beat, and dance. Kids screamed and jumped out of their seats and danced in the aisle. 2 songs and the audiences were worn out. In November, Sylvester and the 2 Tons of Fun and the band opened for the Commodores, 3 Times a Lady in Oklahoma, Played with the OJs, Used to Be My Girl, War, Why Can't We Be Friends, and LTD, Back in Love Again, in Texas. Headlined the disco convention for Ashford and Simpson, the Roxy in Los Angeles, where Sylvester, the Los Angeles Times reported, was cheered by gay and proud guys in shorts, hair, and t-shirts who appeared to be greeting a messiah. They also did gigs in nearly every disco in New York City, including one where you checked your clothes at the door. Where the hell is this? What the heck? In New York that December, Sylvester opened for Shaka Khan at the Capitol Theater, wearing silver sequined robe, a feather boa, and black high-heeled boots. Sylvester was invited back to New York for the 1979 Billboard Disco Forum in February. He had already collected a couple of trophies at the National Disco Awards in Boston, where he was Best Male Artist to Donna Summer's Best Female. You make me feel mighty real. Although the folks at Fantasy were certainly thrilled to have a hit record on their hands, they couldn't even begin to wrap their arms around Sylvester. Sylvester wasn't interested in competing with the middle-of-the-road disco people, he said, but with the stars in the disco big leagues.